if anyone wants to take on that role for tonight. If not, we'll just muddle through.
Yeah, what does that entail? Just starting the meeting, Keith?
Basically, you're just sort of like, you know,
Yeah,
being the ringleader, I guess. Well, one of the things is that you know, last on the agenda is the Big Y application.
Right.
That should just be a minute to revisit that. So I don't know if members wanted to jump to that one or not.
We could just do that first since we already saw it.
Yeah, and also because what they did was such a simple thing.
I don't see anything about the Big Y. Did I miss that somewhere? This is Jenny.
It was on the posted agenda. It might not have been on the draft one that went out in the mail.
Gotcha. All right, I'll check that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's nothing, no drawings or paperwork came for it.
Let's see here.
We submitted drawings to Keith.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm sorry. I do have it. I just have to look at it very quickly, but you can continue.
All right, well, if we want to jump to that one, in summary, what they did is they took the board's get my screen back here. They took the board's comments and basically just are going to repaint the existing siding to a gray color. So technically what they're doing doesn't even need the ADRB's review anymore, or really doesn't even need PZC's review anymore, because it's sort of a downscale of the redesign they were thinking of before. And I don't know if anyone from Big Y is here to summarize that.
Yeah, Sean, I'm the architect, Sean Thomas. I was on the last meeting, and we took the comments, went back to Big Y, and the decision was made to scale back the design to basically just, you know, paint it to colors that are more familiar to New England, and that, you know, made it pop enough to where we felt comfortable resubmitting what we had.
And I can pop these up on the screen.
Yeah, show it on the screen.
Yeah, the only other changes are signage and the banding below. There's a band, and the wording will change down there. But for the most part, material stayed the same. We didn't change anything, and we just painted it.
What color are you painting it? Did you say a gray?
It's I believe it's blue, white, and gray.
All right, can
oh yeah.
Can people see that? Gonna try to zoom in a bit.
Yeah, if you clicked on the email that Keith sent out earlier this morning, there's a link to it in the agenda. But same thing that's up on the screen right now.
I mean, just changing the colors really makes it stand out much more than it did before.
It does. It kind of brightens it up. Yeah.
It does. It really does.
So it looks like there's a vertical siding in the main facade there behind the Big Y sign. Is that right? Like like
That's correct, and that's existing siding. It just, you can see it better with the color than you could with the brown. But yeah, you're correct. That's the existing. Yeah, we didn't. It's funny because I thought the same thing when I first saw it, and I had to take a double take. We didn't change the materials. It's just the color makes it pop out more.
Yeah, those clapboards.
And then the signage changed in the building too. That's the other, noticeable difference.
Mm-hmm. I think it looks nice. Kitchen.
Yeah, yes, I agree. It does. The gray updates it, modernizes it, and the darker on the bottom is nice, pleasing, rather than the darker on the roof edge.
So I guess I'll make a motion to accept the design, even though we don't really need to do that.
I'll second that, Jenny.
Good with it. This is Mark.
Can I just? For some reason I was muted. I was wondering if it was possible to balance the fenestration from one side to the other, because there's a lot of glass on one end and very little on the other. And I've always sort of noticed when you're in that market how sort of dark it is in where the cashiers are. And if there was some more glass on that side, I think it would really be a lot more pleasing.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to take a look or talk to Big Y, because the placement of glass also dictates what's on the other side of that, to where we could or couldn't place glass.
Mm-hmm.
And off the
there's
top of my head, I just
absolutely
don't know.
There's nothing there inside the market currently. Maybe you have other plans, but beach bowl displays. It would just liven up the facade a bit.
I also like how you continued the white sort of colonnades all the way up to the roof line above the big Y logo. It tends to give it some height, the illusion of height, I guess.
You're talking about the main canopy, taking those two vertical columns and just continuing that all the way up to the trim?
Yes,
okay.
In the white. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It sets off that main entry area nicely, I think.
So it sounds like what Keith's saying is we don't really need to, or even have the opportunity to comment on the overall design. It's really just a color change. Is that correct, Keith?
Yeah, it's true, but the motion wouldn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I can mention those changes to the owners. The glass and the continuing the white trim up. I can mention it to them and see what their thoughts are.
Well,
I
think Jenny.
Yeah.
I think Jenny was complimenting the existing proposed or the proposed change as is. So
yes, that's correct. That's
okay.
Correct. Yep. Correct.
So now we don't have to go through P&Z, is what I heard, correct?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if it's just painting what's there and moving some signs around, I don't think that would kick it up to PZC.
Okay. That's good to know.
Do we take a vote?
Yeah, it looks like Leslie made the motion, which was seconded.
Okay, I'll vote. Yes. I'll vote yes for it.
I'll vote yes.
Hi, Mark.
Aye, Jenny.
All right, the motion
Yeah. Motion carries.
carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. So now I assume we'll get something in writing that
yeah, we can send something.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we can send something that summarizes their vote.
Okay, I appreciate that. That way they have something on file.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, guys.
So yeah, next
You're
up.
welcome.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, next
Thank
up
you,
we've got
Mr. King.
ADRB 2103. Review of the new restroom and catering buildings at Stoneacres Farm, 381 North Main Street. Assessors map 81, block 1, lot 2, zone HD, Agricultural Heritage District. So I will pass it over to Ms. Leeming and the team there.
Great, thank you, Keith. I'm Julia Leeming. I'm the architect for the bathroom and the catering buildings. Adrian Nile is here of Reed Hilderbrand Landscape Architects, and Jane Miser of Stoneacres Farm is also here. May I share my screen, Keith? Do I have to do anything special?
Sure. No, you can just do it.
Great. So I will start and then hand it over to Adrian in a little bit. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we came before you a few months ago and informally walked you through the proposed catering and restroom buildings, and now this is our formal review. Not too much has changed though. So, but just to lay the groundwork, Stoneacres Farm is located at North Main Street and Route 1 in Stonington. And in addition to being a working farm, they also hold events, programming. For instance, the Yellow Farmhouse Education Center, which is located right here, has educational programming and has been sort of invaluable through the COVID reality this year, and ceremonies. So before we start talking about the buildings and the landscape strategies, I just wanted to walk you through those three types of events. So the farm stand field is what we call this field. This is the existing farm stand where in the summertime you may have gone to buy vegetables and bread and cheese. This is the tent field, and this is where often it's weddings, other celebrations as well, but this is where more formal events happen. And then the formal gardens are right here. So to show you, this is an oyster fest that was held 2 autumns ago. And this is my family entering in between an existing stone wall and this farm stand. And events in the farm stand field tend to be sprawling like this, informal blankets, tables, bands, but it really is, it's about people gathering in this big open space, and typically food production happens back at the sort of southern end of the farm stand field next to the Fire Beast. And most of the events held in that farm stand field really are about the sort of event of the production of the food and also the consumption of the food. And this is just this is the Fire Beast close up, which is again this outdoor cooking area. And this is another event that was held and sponsored by the Yellow Farmhouse Education Center. And again, the cooking was all happening back here. So the more informal events are happening in the farm stand field. In the tent field, typically, again, we're talking about weddings or other celebrations. This first view is a view through this existing tractor path or cart path through to that tent, which is right here. And you can't see it too well, but there is a catering tent tucked in back there as well. And then this view is seen from between the existing manor house and a bridge. Typically when there is a wedding in the formal gardens, afterward, the procession, you process through the formal gardens, around the manor, across a bridge, through the meadow to the tent field. So this is people captured in that moment of transition between the ceremony and the celebration in the tent. And And then lastly, this is the formal gardens, and this is a view to the little pergola where the wedding ceremonies happen. And I think the three types of events that happen at Stone Acres Farm, there were two common deficiencies that Stone Acres identified. One was the need for a permanent catering facility. For pretty much every event that they have, they end up renting a catering tent. And that was need one. And need two, similarly, every event they end up renting porta potties. And so the intention is to give them a permanent facility for catering and a permanent facility for restrooms. And now I'm going to hand it over to Adrian, who will talk a little bit more about the landscaping.
Great. As Julia mentioned, the plan that we submitted is very similar to the one that we reviewed with you before. Most of the work that has taken place and the changes from the last time we were in front of you actually had to do with the utilities and the septic field. The septic field originally was going to be near the fire beast, and the grading of the septic field created kind of a mounding impact. So we worked quite closely with the civil engineer, Clint Brown, who was instrumental in really helping us make sure that we preserved the landform. All along North Main, it's kind of this drumlin ridge landform. And it was about finding the right location for the utility so that the grading that we did would still feel like a natural rolling topography. So that's the big change from the last time we were in front of you. And I'll walk you through some of the logic behind the layout and the siting of the buildings.
Next.
Go to the next slide. This is just a close-up view with the catering building up top and the restroom building kind of in the lower portion of the field. We wanted to locate these buildings kind of on the edge, but we wanted them to feel integrated and part of the landscape. So the next slide. For the catering building, we actually looked at siting the kind of simple, modest structure along the existing historic stone wall with a break in the wall related to the building so that it felt part of a system, preserving what is known as the elephant rock, which is a really beautiful, huge ledge outcropping with a tree that's growing out of it, and then the fire beast having that relationship to the fire beast right there. For the restroom buildings, actually, it's integrating it with an existing cut flower production garden. And here we actually extended the existing cut flower garden so that it captures the restroom building. The design of the restroom building has a kind of open air walk through the center of it. So again, it's a lot of mixing of kind of architecture and landscape. The circulation, if you go to the next slide, kind of the north-south circulation here is the existing tractor path. We are looking at rebuilding the ends of the fieldstone walls, kind of restoring them, and then puncturing a couple of the walls, one for a walkway that would run along the back of the formal garden stone wall to the tent site. And this is an accessible walk that would connect the tent to the restroom buildings in a very kind of discreet way. We actually think it's going to be pretty fantastic walking along just off a few feet off the edge of that stone wall as a way to experience the landscape. And the next slide, kind of the east-west connection, we're equally excited about. And this is puncturing actually the wall in the formal gardens. And there's a path, there's an east-west walk in the formal gardens here on the right, arbors covering it. This is the only path actually that goes from the drive through the entirety of the gardens to this east-west. Will be a small aperture in the stone wall that will allow now for the formal gardens to kind of communicate with the fields in a really discreet and sensitive way. and it would also provide accessible access to the restrooms from the formal gardens as well. There's the same kind of, I mentioned before, east-west connection that moves through the restroom buildings. We made a slight change to the location of the restroom buildings after meeting with you. We actually staked out the location of everything in field, and we made just some minor adjustments. The restroom buildings now is not as centered on the fire beast. So really minor refinements to the landscape. Go to the next slide. And the rest of the landscape is a restoration of meadows and fields. It's not a lot of ornament. It's really about preservation and rehabilitation of the walls, the mature vegetation, the ledge, the landform, and the gardens, and make sure that the circulation network is discrete and logical.
Thank you. Okay, we'll talk about the buildings, and then we're going to come back to some more landscape details afterward. So I'm first going to talk about the catering building, which, as Adrian mentioned, is sort of tucked into this existing stone wall. And again, it straddles the space between the more formal tent field and the more informal farm stand field. And this is the farm stand building, and both the bathroom building and the catering building borrow from this existing farm stands field. So I just wanted to show you these sort of large, oversized barn doors, the vertical tongue and groove siding, and the fairly simple roof plane. So the catering building, I've now sort of turned you 90 degrees. North is up, and the back, I'll zoom in. The catering building on the south side is really a very simple blank elevation with two barn doors that open from the center, so that food coming from the catering building to the wedding tent field, there's very little to see. There won't be light coming through the openings. It really is just a discrete blank elevation. Acknowledging the fact that when things are happening in these tent fields, it's not about seeing into the catering building where the food is being made. It's really about that food coming in and out undetected, essentially. And the catering kitchen on the north side, where it opens up to the farm stand field, presents a much more accessible elevation with two barn doors that open from the center, but then four large 5-by-8 foot windows that are transparent, so that the action in the catering building is very visible from the farm stand field. Let me just go to the sections and elevations. So again, just to reiterate, this is the south elevation, which faces the wedding tents. When closed, the barn doors just shut down that elevation. When it's open, like the bathroom building, there is a view through the building. So when those doors are open, one would be able to see from the tent field through the catering building to the farm stand field. So there's a parallel sort of transparent core within both of the buildings. And then looking at the north elevation, even when closed, I mean, the catering pavilion will probably be used more in nice weather, but it could be used all year. Stoneacres, may make Stoneacres tomato sauce. And even if these doors were shut and it was a chilly November afternoon, people walking on the Stoneacres campus would be able to see the activity happening inside of the catering building. And there's a real emphasis on that transparency and on the educational potential for this catering building. This is when it's open. And then the roof plane for both of the buildings, it's very simple. It's 1.5 pitch shed roof. It'll have a very simple metal panel roof, like many farm buildings do. And then the siding is that tongue and groove 1-by-6 that is borrowed from the farm stand building. The next building is the bathroom building, which is right here. And as Adrian said, it again has an opening through it so that one sees from the backside of that path that we were introducing from the wedding tent to the formal gardens, see through the building back to that farm stand field. In plan, it is 3 equal parts. One side is an accessible women's restroom. The middle is the breezeway that we just discussed. And then the other section is the men's restroom. And there will be both a supply closet for toilet paper and paper towels, but also the Yellow Farmhouse Education Center manages those gardens that Adrian has set the bathroom building in. So this will also be a closet where they keep, educational tools like buckets and hose and all the little things, gloves for the children. So it has a dual purpose there. And like the catering pavilion, the building is deferential to the formal spaces. So the roof pitches towards the formal gardens. Those double doors open and again give you a cut through the breezeway from the path to the formal garden, to the farm stand field. And then on the farm stand side, it's a taller, more open elevation. And then we're really trying to be as sort of gentle and environmental as we can. So when possible, these windows will open and the ceiling fans will promote natural ventilation. So we're trying to, again, use the buildings as teaching tools, showing kids that you can cool spaces passively, and deep overhangs certainly will help keep the building from getting too hot in the summertime. And Adrian, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Great, thank you. The materiality for the landscape is really, again, looking at existing precedent, much like the architecture. The landscape consists of meadows, mown walks, the tractor path, stone dust paths, and then concrete walks that it's the same concrete that's used on the interior that would move out into the exterior, would have kind of a sand washed finish to it with sawn joints. The lighting, again, we wanted to keep minimal, and there are lights. The buildings are lit, but for the landscape, actually, here's the details for the concrete and the gravel walkways, the rebuilding of the stone wall ends, and the lighting itself. The fixture that we picked is a smaller fixture on a timber bollard that would be located along the walk. If you go to the next slide, would be located along the walk from the tent field to the restrooms. And I believe there's 6 or 7 of them along that walk. And they are placed in a way that you will not, if you're looking through the restroom building, you don't see the fixture itself, the wall. And it should be safety levels of lighting, not about accent or ornament. And that concludes the landscape part. I think that may be our last slide for the presentation.
Julia, how many water closets are there?
There are 2 water closets in the men's room and then a urinal. Let me go back. And the women have 3. So 1 accessible men's water closet, 2 urinals, and then 3 water closets in the women's room.
And is this intended to be a 3-season building or a 4-season building?
4-season. We debated that at the beginning of the project. It was more of a 3-season building, but I think with an investment of this magnitude, having it usable 4 seasons just made a lot of sense. So both.
So, how are you going to heat it?
We'll have Mitsubishi units.
So there are no boilers. It's just going to be air compressors.
Yeah. And I think in the landscape, one nice thing about Adrian's garden on this side of the bathroom building is we can hide the units pretty discreetly so that you won't be able to see them.
So your RPZ and all that will go alongside those units?
I don't think we have to have an RPZ here. But
Unless backflow preventer at least, I would think.
we'll have to check. That hasn't come up yet. I know in comfort stations in New York City, you do have to have an RPZ. That has not come up on this end yet.
Okay. Well, electrical utility is coming, is it separately metered or is there a gang meter for the whole facility?
There is going to be a meter on both. I'm just gonna, we have a 400, let me go here. They've brought in 400 amps to a location somewhere in this field, and then we'll pull 200 for this building and 100 for the bathroom building, and they'll each, so there'll be a meter here and a sub meter on this building. We do have a grease trap for, for the septic system for the catering.
So is the application for the farmhouse and the two new buildings for the septic system, or because I see the galleys for the farmhouse
those are just if necessary. If what Luero did is located them if they do need to expand the septic systems for the manor house, the carriage house, and the farmhouse. But the application is just for the septic system for both the bathroom building and the catering building.
And I believe that expansion was required, it's part of the code that you have to show it can be expanded.
Yeah.
So, but the galleys in question are the ones on the right-hand side of the sheet, then, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Exactly.
I really like the flow of these buildings and the sight lines created along the pathways, and the fact that the buildings are separated enough from each other. They don't look like they're crammed together. It seems very well thought out with the landscape and the other structures on the property.
Yes, I also like the opening of both buildings, how you can see through and it opens up the vista. Just really nice feature to have in both buildings.
Thank you.
You can tell a lot of thought went into this whole process as well.
So is it a servery or is it actually a kitchen?
It's not a kitchen. The intention is that, I'll go back to the plan. Caterers typically, what happens now is, you essentially give caterers shelter, and you give them a propane connection, you give them power, and they bring in all of their equipment. And the intention is for this building to do exactly that. So we are providing plumbing fixtures because you have to have a 3-bay sink and a prep sink and a hand sink. But the equipment shown in this plan is just they're placeholders, but none of these fixtures are going to be installed as a part of the project. Caterers come and will bring whatever it is they typically bring. What I'm showing is what most caterers, when they do an event at Stone Acres, they end up having a warming tower, a 4-burner, and a double stack convection oven. But again, it's just up to the caterer. We will have propane so that they connect to that. They can.
Do you need to have an Ansel hood or not?
No, you don't have to have a hood.
And the walk-in cooler is something that's permanently installed with, it will always be cooling, I guess, because food's not going to be in there unless there's an event, or how does that work?
Well, Stoneacres, I mean, also Stoneacres produces a lot of food, so it's possible that the walk-in cooler, they may have a use for it all the time, but yes, the walk-in cooler is there for caterers to use. And as I said, Stoneacres may identify, a use. The Yellow Farmhouse Education Center does lots of educational programming centered around food production. So it may be that, as they grow, that some of that programming comes out of the farmhouse and moves into this catering kitchen. But Breck, it may be that at some point we do need to put in a hood and an Ansel system, but right now it is just a catering kitchen and you do not have to have a hood for that.
Okay. So the thought is that no dishwashing would also be done through this
Exactly.
facility.
That's a big thing. Caterers, you take your dishes with you. You don't, there aren't dishwashers here. It's just about Ledgelight Health District and, just being able to wash your hands, wash your vegetables, and if you need to clean a dish pan, you can do that in the 3-bay.
Yep.
And a mop sink.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing would hold true here. You would put Mitsubishi heat pumps
Yes.
in. So.
Yep, exactly. And in the landscape, let me go to the. So the idea is that the Mitsubishi condensers would be hidden from view back here and also back here. Probably need one per building. But this east wall of the catering building the grade drops away in our favor, and people don't really walk around that backside, so you're not going to be seeing. That's where the propane tank will be. I think the meter is going to be on that side as well. Be sort of the utility side of the building.
And is the utility overhead or is it underground?
Underground. We buried it. They were just doing this work, Jane, a month ago? But they buried it. They came across North Main Street. Can't see it, but they came across North Main Street from a pole, and it's been buried all the way across to somewhere around here. I haven't seen exactly where they came up, but there'll be a transformer.
Okay. So is there a path for the runners to the tent?
No. Adrian, can you talk a little bit about the seeded turf versus the meadow?
Right. Well, this will all be turf. There is no hard path through it. It's a big enough landscape that we don't believe you would need a paved walk. And there was a character question there as well. We really wanted to keep the relaxed feel that Stoneacre Farm has today. Really, the paths tend to be more near the domestic core and less as you get further out into the fields.
What's the distance to you approximately, Adrian? Do you know?
I would guess 75 feet.
The path will develop itself at some point in time. So.
Stop. Shall I stop sharing, or are there more drawings that we might want to look at?
I think we've
there's
got
no more comments.
Good.
Shall we take a vote? Does anybody on the board have any other questions?
I'm all set. This is Jenny.
Let's vote.
I'm all set.
All right, motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
motion passed.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Julia.
Well, up next, we've got ADRB 2104, which is a review of the Planning and Zoning Commission's application, PZ 2113, SUP and CAM, for the demolition and rebuild of the St. Patrick's Church Parish Center, including a 1,500 square foot addition, small addition to the rear of the church sacristy, 33-35 East Main Street, Mystic. So I'll turn it over to their team here.
Hi, Keith. This is Sergio Terenzia for the applicant. With me tonight, Rebecca Nolan should be on the call, and John Doyle. Rebecca Nolan, the landscape architect, and John Doyle with Doyle Coughlin Architects is also with me this evening. I'll give a, and I believe Paul Sarter is also on.
Yes, I am. Yes,
yeah.
I am.
Paul's here
Thanks, Sergio.
representing the church ownership as kind of an owner's rep. So Paul's here to answer any questions that you may have particular to the church and what they're where they've been with this project, where they're planning on going, what the needs are specific to what it's going to be used for. I can start by sharing my screen. I'll just go into a brief introduction just to get everyone a little bit oriented here. So this is actually a survey which was completed previously around 2016. As most of you probably know, the St. Patrick's Church runs between Church Street and East Main Street. The building that we are specifically discussing today is is what we call the Parish Center, which is going to be replaced. You all may be familiar with the Shamrock House, and that's over to the left here on my screen. The Parish Center building is the larger building in the middle, and then the church itself to the right here, and then further off to the right here on Church Street is the parking area to support the church. We conducted our some additional more recent survey work, and so this is the actual parish building. Once again, to orient you, the Shamrock House to the west, northwest, and then the church itself to the south, or east, to the east southeast. And this is the building that we're looking to raise and reconstruct. The building is a relatively older building. It was decided by the church that it just programmatically doesn't meet the space needs that the church requires right now, and just needed some significant updating. So instead of going through a significant renovation, they have decided to raise and rebuild it substantially in the same footprint, but with a minor addition that will meet all the zoning setback requirements. So with that, I'm going to just show you our proposed site plan, and Rebecca and John will be showing you much more attractive and prettier plans than mine, but give you just an idea of what we're talking about, you can kind of see faintly in the background the previous the survey of the previous structure. Most of the walkways, are going to be substantially in the same location, adjusted with the reconstruction of the building to work with a different type of flow to and from the building into the church. And you'll notice one of the prominent features is that these buildings are connected, and I don't want to steal John's thunder, but this is going to very much be an amenity for good flow between the structures from the church to the parish center. In addition to a minor, you can see we're pushing out the building in the front, but not as far as the church proper, so it's not going to look out of place. And then just some walkways and landscaping improvements all around the building, formalizing this drive in the back with a couple of parking spaces and relocating the dumpster to a better spot, walkways around for connectivity between the Shamrock House and the Parish Center. Also eliminating the lot line that's between the two, so that this becomes one parcel, and pretty much the entire project is being considered one. It's one piece of land, even though it's got different parcels to it. But this will eliminate any setback issues by just joining these two parcels together. And then formalizing the front, you get more detail on that from Rebecca, but having a nice continuity between the entrance of the St. Patrick's Church as well as to the assembly, to the Parish Center assembly. So with that, I'll hand it over to Rebecca. I think she's going to be sharing her screen to show some of the landscape elements, and then we'll work into the building with John.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? John, did you want to start with the architecture? I just want to make sure we.
Yeah, I could if that works better. I could.
Yeah, I think just to give the board a bit of background on the building and why, and then, because I think that is the main piece of this project, and then the landscaping is really meant to support that building. So, and then you can just turn over to me and I'll share screen.
Okay, sounds good. I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen here. Let me know if everybody can see the screen.
We can see it.
Okay. All right. Great. So I'll start off. But for the record, I'm John Doyle from Doyle Coffin Architecture. We've been working with St. Patrick's. Our firm does a lot of church work, and we've been working with St. Patrick's, starting with a master plan in 2016, 2017, and we've gone through a lot of different presentations and work with the parish and the constituents there, and kind of finally landed on this plan that we're submitting here tonight for your review and approval. So just to start off by messing you all up, my plan is oriented a little bit differently than Sergio's. I have East Main Street at the bottom of the plan down here, and Church Street at the top of the plan. So and it's sort of set up to look at the church entry and the two entries from Main Street, which is the main elevation of the building. So as you can see, the existing church here is was a shingle style church built in. I have it on the sheet here. I guess the original church was, I guess it was about it looks like 1909 or so. The original church, shingle style, kind of Gothic stick style, and that was a big draw for us. It kind of goes with the Shamrock House, which is also shingle style, small in scale, and we try to draw from that architecture as much as possible to change this modern building built in 1957 into something that would be more contextual fit into the neighborhood, breaking down the masses of the building into smaller scale elements so that it kind of fit into the neighborhood. So I'll get to the elevation, but just to give you a quick orientation, parking lots up here in the right corner, Church Street's at the top. At the main entry to the, there's a connector that connects through the building here to a big lobby. There's a gradually, it's also ADA accessible, so that this gradual ramp here is accessible from the parking lot with a very close drop off. So people can come right out of the car, come in, and then work their way up through here and into the main part of the entry of the church. And this is an exterior ramp on the right-hand side, so it's a little tougher to walk into a mass or to anything else that's going on in the church when you're coming right in the front and right into a small door here. So I think this kind of helps it out a lot. I won't get into too many of the details, but the office area is in the front, which is a day-to-day activity facing Main Street. There's a receptionist in the corner that can monitor the front areas of the building. The community space is in the heart of the building, and there's a flush terrace that's you could walk out or wheel out onto this terrace here, so that's accessible as well. It's also connected by walkway all the way through, so pedestrians really could cut across to go to Church Street, or somebody could come up and sit on it and have a nice cup of coffee up here. And in the Church Street side is the religious formation classrooms. They're flexible spaces, and they're kind of isolated so that there's no kids wandering around the rest of the building. They have a monitor, a principal of sorts, monitoring the situation from this office here. The pastor's office is in the corner here, which helps with views to the backyard and to the street on this side, Shamrock House, so they can keep an eye on that. And the sexton's office is over here in the back, and it has a window facing the parking lot. So you have people around the building from a day-to-day standpoint, and they can keep an eye on things, and we have good flow coming through here. It has generous spaces for gathering and so forth, and it all fits, except for this addition right here that connects to the building. It all fits on the existing footprint. And that was the trick, to get all the programmatic elements to fit on that big rectangle. Looking at the architecture, I mentioned that the idea was to take this big building and break it down into smaller scale elements that will break down the mass of the building. So the church still remains and should remain the most prominent piece. This is an existing element to the building that was a baptistry before. This is now the connector, and it connects this piece. And what we did was we mirrored that shape onto the end where the pastor's office is, and that kind of bookends the composition and of the structure. The other thing about the facade, and you can see how it fits into the scale, it starts to bring the scale down and fit into the scale of the Shamrock House here. So it brings a little bit more of a consistent rhythm to East Main Street. One of the things is that as you know, in this area, the floor level is about 4 feet above grade. So one of the things is when you enter on grade, it feels like the doors are low, or if the people in the windows are hovering over the street. So what we try to do here is use a band of a horizontal band that brought the sill line lower, so that it would relate more to the street level person walking by. And kind of, instead of having it, and hopefully the building being more welcoming, because it's more related to the street in that way. So people walking by don't feel like that and people in the building don't feel like they're looking down onto the sidewalk from here. So the new addition is in line with the existing line of the buildings. The entry is just a bracketed entry with a roof that marks, it's kind of low key, and it marks the entry. It's intended to be in keeping with the architecture of the church. We're hoping that if funds permit, that we're able to re-shingle the church and bring it back to the original aesthetic with the brackets and all the different details that were in that. And then I'll just go down and show you the Church Street side. There is a small addition to the back of the sacristy, which gives it much needed space in the back of the church. And then there's a fence at the top of it. It's a flat roofed area, and the mechanical equipment that's in the basement right now will be moved up to the roof and then screened by this detailed railing system. The entry from the parking lot from the loading area is right here. There's it's a store, you know, it's right at grade. There's a lot of glass, so you can really, it really indicates that this is the entry for the social hall and the different areas of this structure. You know, there's an interior ramp that goes up along this. So, and it's using the same languages at the front. So the entry language is the same. You can see that one of the things about this building is that it is built over the setback line, and this will be not there'll be no increase in the nonconformity, because what we did here was we set the wall once it is brought down to the floor level. We set the new wall level, you know, about 8 inches or a foot back from the existing base, and then the eave line comes out from there. So we're right on the same line. One of the other features of this building is that we've introduced the pitched roof. The pitched roof brings the eave line lower, and it brings the highest points of the roof back away from the edge. So it doesn't have the same impact as the existing gym with the flat roof, with the 2-story flat roof, and it has a much lower impact on the surrounding buildings. You can see a small monitor right here. This is located right above the center of the social hall, so that will bring a natural light into the center of the building and balance off the daylighting that's going to be coming through the terrace doors. Looking at the materials quickly, we're proposing a hardy shingle in the for the church and for the addition. So the colors are not quite, we're looking at these kind of muted neutral colors, which is, we have the Arctic white and we have the pearl gray. So these are the two in the works right now. The infill system with the windows and doors is a bronze standard frames, and the base will be a face stone at the bases of the entries here, you know, in this center section. So we had and that relates to the same type of stonework that's at the front of the church and flanking the steps going up. All right, and so now, and I think that's all I have right now, but I can answer any questions. I'll let Rebecca do her piece, and then I could be happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay.
All right, thank you, John. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. For the record, Rebecca Nolan, landscape architect. What we're looking at right now, hopefully you guys can see it, is an existing view of the front of this property. And I wanted to start here because, you know, the main goal of this reworking is really to create, you know, a streetscape aspect along East Main and kind of connect these 3 buildings almost. It's, you know, there's the church, there's the what we're calling the Parish Center, and then the Shamrock House, and kind of combining them into one real property. So I'm just going to go over the site plan very quickly. Let's see, we can start here with the front, and I'm oriented the same as John, and the purpose of that really is to show you how this ties into the existing streetscape along East Main. So we have, you know, a very large existing tree, and I think it's the intention of the parish as well as the parish community and the owners to try and leave as many existing trees as possible. And so this rendition really goes to saving those trees. I would say that these aren't special trees by any stretch, but they are providing shade, and without needing to damage them during construction, we feel that we can save them. So we've got a Norway maple in the front, another one in the back. Hopefully you guys can see my cursor here. We have an existing garage and kind of a existing buffer along the west side of the property. That buffer we would use to maintain. It's about 15-foot mature buffer on the other side of the Shamrock House driveway. And then what we're really proposing is to continue that buffer along the edge of the property line there, and that is really to delineate property line. Right now there is a fence, but it's kind of fallen into disrepair. The intention is really to delineate that line and provide more privacy between the abutting neighbor and the church property. There are two parking spots we're showing. Sorry about that. Two parking spots in the back coming off of Church Street. So just really trying to formalize those and moving around the trash and recycling. I'm just going to show you an existing conditions photo. You can see that, it's kind of a disorganized situation in the back. So we're really just trying to kind of organize all of that, the use of the dumpster area, as well as this is the existing condition along the northwest property line, which just really needs to be cleaned up. While I'm here, I guess, just showing you the existing streetscape. You've got the utility poles, which the streetscape project added the lighting there. We have, the existing Norway maple, which again isn't the greatest tree, but the intention is to save it. And on the back side, we have along Church Street, and I'll show you this in the site plan. There is an existing tree there. It's in seriously bad condition. So the hope is that we would work with Maggie to select, a tree that works to replace it. But as the clients here are, intend to put in 2 street trees along the back side of that building to kind of clean up the streetscape there. So I think, just trying to kind of tie in walkability. You can see the sidewalk there gets very narrow. The intention would be to keep the sidewalk, at a consistent. And then let me just go up to the front here. You can see there's some existing beds around the Shamrock House. We're not intending to make any changes there. So really just trying to preserve, that as much as possible, and avoid really changing that area. So that was, over here along the side of the Shamrock House. You've got covered porch. So these are the 2 street trees I'm proposing right now off of the town of Stonington's tree list. They're little leaf lindens, and they right now are being shown on the church property. And so the intention is that the church, as part of this work, would be putting in the investment to get street trees back in that area. We did leave a space if the town does, want to, replace that street tree. We could coordinate with Maggie Jones and whoever else at the town to figure out what that might look like. These are all new garden areas around the church you see here in the back, really meant to mimic the garden that is to the east. There's a very well-established churchyard garden. It's, hydrangeas mostly, perennials, very well kept. The intention is really to have that type of character extended along the back and into the front of the church. So I'm going to end with the front piece because I think, this is kind of the entrance, and the idea of opening up a plaza in this area was something that was, we felt as the design team could really help kind of tie it into the streetscape, as well as, from a perspective of the owner, they have a lot of events that kind of end up out in front of this church building. They sometimes spill over into the churchyard. This would just provide more space for those type of community activities to happen. I think you're all familiar with the art festival often takes up space in some of these areas. So really trying to think about how the space has been used and how it might be used in the future. I think that's everything. There is a very small, I don't know if you see my cursor, a very small little alleyway in the middle that is really, you know, I would say an area for solitude. It's you know, it's very private back here. It connects this access, the stairs from the existing church. And, you know, I think the church and the owners and the community kind of would like to develop that area as kind of more private, you know, sanctuary space. I'm gonna jump to planting very quickly. This is, you know, like I mentioned, using a lot of the plant material that's that you already see in the east side churchyard. A lot of low maintenance perennials, bulbs, flowering trees. There's a beautiful saucer magnolia in front right now. So I think there's an intention to want to kind of replace that aspect on the other side so that it matches. Let's see, proposed materials also muted as John mentioned. We're looking at grays, the bluestone pavers, proposing that for the front would match the terrace, which is off the back west side of the building. Talking about using, you know, stabilized stone dust or some sort of gravel along the side of the building. And then, you know, in this kind of alleyway, xeriscaping so that we wouldn't, you know, need to do a ton of maintenance. Different ideas for fencing would be a 6-foot high privacy fence. And I think, you know, we would work with the abutting neighbor to just, you know, make sure that that gets put in the right spot, creates that boundary and delineates the property line. So just really quickly to show, there is concrete running along the Shamrock House, and that's purely for maintenance. So that's really just replacing the pathway that was already there. And then from the back of the Shamrock House all the way to Church Street, we're proposing as permeable gravel. And that is really to try and preserve this tree, which you can see is quite close to the edge. And, you know, create, this is more for use of, you know, employees and staff, not so much public use. But towards the front, where we would like to keep it accessible all year round. So imagine, you know, plowing and shoveling and that type of thing up front. I think that's everything. I can leave this up if that's helpful for any other questions you guys might have. And Sergio, did you want to say anything else?
No, I just wanted to just add in that we are applying for a special use permit for this use. It's a churches and places of worship and their recreational facilities incidental to the church are allowed by special use permit, and we're in an RH zone here. So everything's allowed by the regulations, by special use permit. And to reiterate, it's basically a raise and rebuild of a similar or pretty much the same space with improved programmatic. I think we've identified it's going to be a drastic improvement in the aesthetic, just given the two buildings having such a different look to them, and now everything's going to be really tied together, consistent, and improve that streetscape, both for pedestrian use and then also an improvement from the rear parking area and along Church Street as well, and along East Main in the front for the pedestrians. So with that, unless John or Rebecca had anything else, or if Paul, you had any comments you wanted to make, we can open it up to questions.
No comments for me. But I'm again, as Sergio said, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you.
I had a couple of comments and a question. Rebecca, you mentioned fencing being used, and, but I wasn't sure, or even if you specified where it was going to be used. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
It was regarding the fencing. You mentioned
Yep.
fencing being used, but I may have missed what you said.
Sure. So what we're proposing is for the 6-foot high privacy fencing to run along the western property line. And that's really to just delineate where the property line is, and then, you know, clean up that edge where you see us proposing the fence and then with the evergreen buffer in front of it. It is a residential lot next door, so I think it's, you know, it's pretty important that the delineation happens there, and that, you know, there's kind of a proper edge to the lot line, especially since we've got, you know, an existing garage of a, you know, and the Shamrock House is, you know, both still being in use by the owners.
Rebecca, did you have pictures of that, or I thought I saw one on your presentation of the picture along there?
Let's see. It's a little hard to see, but
Isn't the bottom right one kind of show the adjacent parcel and what we're trying to screen?
yeah.
A little bit of it.
So this, I don't know if you guys can see this, that little square there. That's the existing garage. And so there's a lot of invasives kind of growing along the edge of a, you know, a very rough fence. So we're proposing to formalize that, delineate the property line, and connect it to the existing buffer down here, which is off of East Main Street. We've got kind of a very clear buffer that's in between the buildings.
Hi, this is Brett Perkins. First, I want to thank you for a very thorough presentation and a very good set of documents. I would like to ask on the Parish Hall, what is considered the primary entrance to the building?
Well, you know what? It depends on the situation, but you know, from day to day, I would probably say that it is it's the front entrance. But I think during a mass or during one of the big events, the main entrance would be from the parking lot, and including like night meetings and so forth. So, you know, I think you could make an argument either way, but this entrance with the ramp coming inside and then up into the you can't see my cursor, but in the ramp into the anteroom, that or gathering area that's near the front, that's probably going to act as more of the main entrance.
Because your receptionist sits in the front of the building, so that was the reason why I asked the question. So
yeah, the day to day, what I would expect on the day to day situation is that somebody might would parallel park out there and come in, because it's very few people that come into the office. Paul, you might be able to weigh in on that, but it may be 1 or 2 people, you know, a week that come in there. It's something like that. It's my guess. And
yeah, I'll jump in, John. Yeah, primarily the addition to the front of the center allowed us to do is switch the offices from across the street in the rectory into the parish center. So that'll be the hub or the center. And as John said, very few people are coming in on a daily basis. But it just allows the building to be open and to be open all the time, every day during normal business hours, other than the days he's off, maybe on a Thursday. But the primary entrance on the day, 2 to 3, 4 people a day will probably, as John says, walk in there. But during major functions that are going on, whether it be mass, baptisms, weddings, all the parking's in back. That's where the handicap parking is. That's where indoor access is from an ADA perspective. That's where the safest drop-off area is. Certainly Main Street is a great place to be, maybe in the summertime and maybe when it's snowing, things like that. So we've provided the primary access during events and masses and things like that is really in the rear.
Okay, this is Leslie Driscoll. I have a question about the front facade and coming towards East Main Street. The amount of lawn that has been given way to the new building structure and the new landscaping. It looks like you're going from about 43 feet of front grassy area from the existing parish facade to about 10, which will greatly impact how people gather there. I know I've driven by that church and seen crowds of people coming out of weddings or funerals and just congregating in that front grassy area. So now there's going to be a real limited space. That new building really comes towards the road a lot more, even though the architecture is beautiful. I like that, but it looks like we're really reducing the amount of lawn more than might be realized. So I just wonder about that for circulation, when you talk about.
Yeah. I think it's a good point, Leslie. It was one of those things where we had to get a lot of program into the building, and we did make this addition to lineup. It goes up to the setback line, so it meets the setback requirement. I think it's more of a linear gathering. We've added some width to it in terms of paved area. It isn't. You do lose that small area of lawn in front, but it kind of ties. I guess the idea was to really tie the two buildings together, and we really needed that interior connection for the ADA accessibility, really for the whole building, not just the church itself or not just the hall itself. We try to kind of come back with the terrace on the side and engaging the back lawn. But you make a good point that things that people will probably need to spread out across the Main Street area. And again, I think with people gathering after big events and masses and so forth, it is great to have all the people out there and have a lot of people gathering in front of one of these places. That was always the intent, to stay there. We try to add the benches in front so people could hang out, even when it's not one of those kind of events, so that people would sit in front of the building and so forth. But you're right, that we do lose a little yard there.
Yeah, it seems like the grass area starts now or stops at about where the existing sign is, from what I could tell from that existing conditions photograph that Rebecca had shown.
Yeah, that bends it a little bit, but it aligns with the structure on the right, basically right behind the sign. It's in line with
there's another sign closer to the Shamrock House that isn't part of this view.
Yeah.
But okay. Yeah.
Well, you can count windows and figure out how big that setback is. It looks like it's 3 bay in, so.
Well, you can see it. There's dimensions on the Terenzia plan, so you can see exactly what it is.
One approach might be. Oh, go ahead. One approach might be that the planting in front could be, just closer to the building, or shaped maybe, to create more, at least the impression of more lawn and more space out there.
Yeah, I would consider that. I love seeing the landscaping, but I would, because I think the people in the church are going to feel the pinch of how tight it is. So when they,
if I may, this is Paul Starter. Yeah, I live right down the street. I've been a parishioner for 35 years. The flow generally doesn't congregate onto the grass. It flows out right in front of the church, pushes into the garden next door, pushes into the street as people get in their cars, whether it be a wedding or something like that, or it's a funeral or First Communion, whatever it may be. What this will allow, as John said, it actually will provide more mulling around area, because most people are not standing on the grass. That grass is really only used periodically for Art Fest, for those types of events. And we really didn't, those aren't church events. And this was the only place that we could connect the church. That's where it had to be. There's no other place to do it. We've stayed within the setbacks, and the flow now will go into a beautiful new building, and there may not be so many people exiting out the front door, because there'll be functions possibly right after, and people will flow within the property, in the buildings, into the center. So in my 35 years of going to mass here, very familiar with the flow of the way this is going to go. And I'm very happy. Do we miss the grass? Yes, but either we have programming, we put offices there, which are more convenient, because right now, for people to visit the pastor and visit the office, there's limited ADA accessibility. They're very difficult stairs. So we're trying to provide a better access for not only our parishioners, but the entire community. And this allows us to do that.
But that is very important, to provide accessibility for everyone who would ever want to come into the building and use it.
I would only add, if there was a way to find a ramp to the front somehow, I think because I mean, you think about the poor person who's in a wheelchair, as their granddaughter is leaving the church, and they are now where they're seated in the church, have to find their way through that side door all the way back to the ramp, come all the way to the front of the building. By that time, the bride and the groom have probably left. So that's the only comment that I have, is that if there was a way to find a way to put a ramp into the front of the building, you would be doing yourself, especially as our parishioners are aging. So, and I'm watching my mother and my mother-in-law having a difficult time finding their way into any building. So
yeah, that's a good point, Breck. Yeah. I do really appreciate the architecture of the new building, and how there's symmetry with that existing portion attached to the church. The roof lines are really lovely as well.
One of the other things too about bringing that eave line it also helps bring more natural light into the existing church. So the big, with a flat roof that goes right up next to it now, I think we'll have the church will get a lot more natural light. And the other thing I forgot to mention there was that all the mechanical roof, the pitched roof creates a well at the top, and all the mechanical equipment will be hidden on the roof. You won't be able to see it from the street.
And this is Jenny. Can you just elaborate a little bit on the sacristy addition? Is it just adding sort of the bay window push out? Does it provide more storage?
That's correct. It is just the bay window. There's not a whole lot of room with the way the parking lot is configured right now, and really only necessary to get a little better flow back there. I mean, it's pretty much an ancient sacristy back there, and they need more space for people to set up, and for storage, for vestments and so forth. And it's kind of chopped up into a lot of different small spaces. So the bay allows us to open it up more inside, and it also creates that extra roof space to move the mechanical equipment from the basement of the church, now susceptible to flooding, to the roof, where it'll be safer from that.
Thank you.
Sure.
what is the base elevation at the curb?
Sergio probably has that. Rebecca, is that on?
Just got to take a look at the survey here real quick. Hold on 1 second.
I think it's 8.
What elevation were you looking for? The elevation
The
of the
curb
curb?
elevation.
The concrete walk is about 4.8.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And then the building itself is
elevation. The finished floor of the building is right about elevation 8.
Yeah.
We are in a flood zone. I think I failed to mention that earlier. I didn't know if it was, but just for the record, we are in a flood zone, and I believe the base flood elevation is somewhere around 13. I could be mistaken on that, but it's pretty significant here. Let's see here. No, I'm sorry, 11. But the building will be flood code compliant. It will not. I don't believe its finished floor elevation will be that high, but it will be designed as such to be flood proofed.
Any other questions we can answer?
I guess I'd like to reiterate Breck's comment about handicap ramp in the front of the church. If that could be worked in, I think that would really enhance the usability.
We've explored that, and that went through those plans through months of planning, and we understand that thought, and that we reviewed that. However, there's no parking in front. And
it's for people who are dropped off, though. People who are dropped off.
The ADA states, excuse me, the ADA states the primary entrance, and I asked the question before, and you said the front door is the street door. The ADA states that the primary entrance needs to be handicap accessible. That's what the code says.
John, go ahead.
Well, I think I don't think that the ramp is probably the best possibility for both Main Street and Mystic or the building itself. But a possibility might be to do a lift inside the lobby. You know, that's something that we could take a look at, and that way they can come in the door and the lift is right there, brings you up to the level of the church, and that would solve the accessibility issue, and it would keep the front entrance the way it looks now.
I think that's a great idea.
It might be it may be cost prohibitive or not, or something, but we'll definitely look into it.
Thank you.
We currently have 2 ramps. We have a ramp in the rear, and we have a ramp on the east side of the church.
I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that the primary entrance needs to have some ADA access.
We'll look into the Garaventa lift. We put them into several buildings, and particularly in a case where where you really don't have the space, it might be a good solution. Probably we'll take a look at that. A chairlift would also probably work. They do a lot of those as well. There's an entrance to the office on the side that we would suggest that go on, but there's probably an interior option that we could probably look at.
This is Mark. How you all doing tonight?
Mark.
So I'm going to start by saying that I think John, right, did a great job of breaking the mass down and not competing with the church. Given the footprint of this facility and how it does not compete with the church, you've done a great job with that. On the Church Street side, it's actually, I walk that every day. Paul probably walks Main Street as much as I do. I probably walk Church Street more than anybody with my dog every day. And what you're doing back there is like almost too good for Church Street. It's the unforgotten road back there. And I would a couple of things regarding the handicap accessibility. having watched this church operate for many years, walking by it, I'd almost say that the back is the primary entrance, because that's where I see people coming in from. There's hardly any parking on the street side, and I would argue to say that the back, whatever, let's call it the north, is the primary entrance. And also, John, what you're going to run into is you're knocking the building down and you're building new. And according to the building code, we were denied the ability to use a lift at Bravo Bravo because it was a completely new rebuild. Only can the lift be used in a rehabilitation context. So Larry Stannard is going to deny that if you try to make that the primary ADA entrance, unless he's changed, and you never know how that's going to go. So I think, first of all, you're not going to get it by the code, and second of all, from the primary parishioner parking lot, I would argue to say that the north side is indeed the primary area that the parishioners are coming from, having watched this. Leslie, I completely understand what you're saying about the lawn in the front, and I've attended funerals at the church and what have you, but I think Paul is also spot on in how it works to congregate and disperse at the same time. I'm just I'm overly impressed with overall how good a job this is going to be in contributing to the streetscape of downtown Mystic. I mean, I love the 1950s and I love the building that's there, but it's time, and I think that this is definitely going to contribute in a really nice way. So anyway, those are my thoughts. There could be a baby crying in a second.
Thank you.
This is Jenny.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, just to echo what others are saying, very lovely presentation. The color renderings, we see a lot of drawings, and this is really the top. And I thought the design was just very dignified, and the parish building really echoes more of it being part of a church than currently, as it was originally designed as a school, so I could understand that, but it really ties in a lot better now, and just wanted to let you know that I did appreciate all the work that went into it, the windows, and very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you everyone for your comments on this. We've worked very hard on this. We've got a committee that has beaten these things to death. There's a lot of development that's gone on around town. Again, I've been here for 35 years in town, and this is just about the only, and because everything is based on economics, and it's based on building as high as you can, as big as you can, as broad as you can. You know that better than anybody, Mark. When you're trying to design for a client, it has to be economically the most feasible it possibly can. This is actually a structure that isn't based on economics other than cost. We're not looking to build the tallest, the broadest, the largest to fit as much in there as we possibly can. The design is really based certainly on function and the minimum that we have to construct to provide that function, and that's what we've done. Our original design was much larger, and we pulled it back, and of course it's cost. But we feel that we've created an incredible improvement on East Main Street, incomparable to anything else that's there right now. and we're pretty proud of it. We appreciate you folks giving us the time to show you, and we greatly appreciate the positive comments, as well as some of the thoughts and insight you may have to our design. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good, well said, Paul.
So Keith, with that, is there any other questions or comments? Once again, we appreciate the feedback, and we would like your endorsement to go to planning and zoning next month.
I'd make a motion to approve as submitted. As for the comments I made before, I don't see that there's any room for the ADA issue. I understand it, but I don't think it's going to be approved, given I've been through this before. I think that the building's form and spatial functions are spot on. I think the landscape is very well thought out. I love walking by. I walk through the garden. Maybe I shouldn't, but I walk through the garden with my dog all the time. And
you're welcome every time, Mark.
And I wave to the gardener all the time. I'm not sure that he knows that he knows me that well. But I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
I'll second. I didn't comment too much on the architecture. This is Crystalline again, but yeah, I thought it was a great improvement all around, especially in the rear, and I think it is difficult. There's a lot of challenges with a larger scale building, and I felt like the attempts to break it up were successful, and definitely a significant improvement from what's there now. So I'll definitely second Mark's motion.
This is Jenny, and I would just a quick thing I wanted to mention about the landscape design. I think it's great that you have included more of the four-season sort of thinking with the spring bulbs, especially in some of the more fragrant bushes, because that's part of the joy of going to the church, as well as seeing the plants at all times of year.
Thank you, Jenny.
There's a second motion. Should we all? I say, yay. Let's vote for it as
Jenny
presented.
Yes. Aye.
Aye, Mark.
Yeah, Mark made the motion, so I think everybody said aye, right?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
All right, so it looks like we got 4 yeses and 1 abstention.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your time this evening, and we'll hope to be successful at our next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.
Good luck.
You.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
very
night.
much.
Thank you.
So it looks like we have a couple of draft minutes on here. There's 2 sets from March 8th and April 12th. If anyone had any comments or wanted to make a motion on those.
I make a motion to accept.
Would that be just for each one or for both?
For both.
Okay. I just had one minor edit on the April 12th one, which it might be just a placement of a sentence in the second to the last paragraph where Ms. Driscoll motioned to recommend approval, but then the next sentence, Mr. McKinley recommended screening electrical meters. I mean, it's fine as is, but should that recommendation go before the, or is that in the order that it happened?
I'll double check on the recording. It might have just been the order that it happened.
Could you turn that down,
Sure.
please?
But I'll
Not that
double
it's
check
important.
that.
It just struck me as a little funny, but it's fine if it is.
Sure.
But that was the only thing. Otherwise, I would say I would second the motion to approve.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, and earlier today I sent an email from the first office to Michael McKinley about going back to regular meetings in June. And the first selectman's office found a new home for this board, which looks like it'll be at the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center, 27 Chase Street in Pawcatuck, because the town hall meeting room is just a little too close for comfort and dealing with COVID. So, you know, it's a bit more of a spacious location there. But, you know, so for the June meeting, we may be back to normal at Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center.
Is there a certain room? I'm not as familiar. The big room where they pack the food? Is that kind of where it is?
I'm not very familiar with the building either. I think I went to a
Okay.
meeting there 15 years ago.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good, though. It's good.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I look forward to doing that.
Be nice to be in a meeting together again.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if they have anything as far as AV equipment and projecting plans on a screen or anything like that.
Is the police department not available?
I'm not sure for that.
Oh, the Pawcatuck Middle School? That whole middle school building,
Or the Human Resources building?
Yeah, Human Resources is a bit tight. The old Pawcatuck Middle School, you know, we use that for some of the larger meetings. It might be overkill for this group, especially because this is you don't want to get too close nowadays, but sometimes with this board, you do want to be around a table looking at plans instead of, you know, sitting up there like, you know, the big city council or something.
When you get 6-foot sticks.
Person, yeah.
And in the middle school, I think the acoustics are difficult. It's very cavernous, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually there it's, you know, using the big PA system.
I would think that in the PNC building, it's probably on the ground floor because the second floor big room is now the thrift store, I believe.
Oh, right.
But that's fine. I'm happy to be indoors. Got my vaccine, so.
Yeah, close to your house too.
Yeah, it's close to my house. Yeah, I live in the neighborhood.
And yeah, if anything changes, we'll let you know. But
okay,
it looks to be where we're headed.
Okay, very good.
Thanks. I'm not sure of any applications coming up for the next meeting.
Glad to see the Big Y change their tune.
Oh, that was a surprise.
Yeah, I think it's a huge improvement over what they originally wanted to do. My gosh, just a paint job. You don't have to tear everything apart all the time.
It'll save some money too, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. sometimes change can be just too much.
Sometimes it's just not necessary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what's going on with the new sewer system in Mystic and building permits like Latitude's Restaurant and some of these other projects that seem to have stalled because of the moratorium on the sewer systems?
Well, I mean, it's sort of a moving target. It's the latest I hear is that August it should be up. You know, work on finalizing that connection between Mystic and the borough. It still won't solve all the problems of sewer in Mystic, but it'll at least add, you know, some capacity for some new changes.
So would the Seaport projects that they've brought before the board a couple of years ago start happening, do you think, or is it not quite ready?
You know, some of those might not be being held up because of the sewer issue. Because the Seaport has so many buildings that they can say, hey, we got rid of this building and we're building this one. We're not using something here, but we are here. The hotel was delayed more because of COVID than anything.
Okay.
But there was also that other research building, which I think they plan on going forward with. The one for the ocean exploration.
Keith, what's going on with the property of Wickety Quack with a cleared out site? Is that guy going to comply at some point in time?
Well, you know, there's a zoning enforcement action about the building in the rear being renovated without permits and not meeting the floodplain regulations. But otherwise, the plan is for them just to basically fix up with what's there. I don't think they have any plans on doing anything really different or building anything new.
Well, they got to stabilize that site at some point in time. It's going to erode away if they don't plant it. I mean, it's topsoil all over the place, or not even topsoil now. It's you know, I don't recall what you call the strati below topsoil, but it's that almost clay dirt.
Okay, I know the CEO went out there and was under the impression it was not a real ENS issue, like it wasn't that bare when she went there, but
every time I go by it, it's just a big brown field. So,
all right.
And then the apartment buildings at Spruce Ridge, anything new with them?
I mean, we are hearing that it's getting back on track, that they've settled with the contractors that they were at odds with. They have a new project manager. So we're hearing it's getting back on track.
Hey, Keith, if we're all set, I've got to run. I've got to make a quick call before it gets too late.
Sure.
Good night, all.
Have a good night.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.